Hello, and welcome to the Second Chapter Variety Show, where we mix cosmic magic with a whole lot of business mastery. I'm your host, Hunter Louder, your friendly guide to business astrology, here to help you navigate your career's second act with the wisdom of the stars and innovative business strategies. Whether you're new to astrology or have been stargazing since day one, this podcast is your go-to for discovering who you truly are and aligning your business with your unique astrological blueprint. We're going to get real about what actions to take to build a perfect fit business. Each week, you can expect a mix of cosmic insights, practical business tips, and lots of laughter. Whether I'm chatting with guests who've embraced their own second chapters or diving into astro business wisdom, there's always something you can take away and apply to your own business. Welcome to the Second Chapter Society. Today, we're diving into the powerful transformation story of Jenna, the founder of Santa Cruz Mountain Reiki. If you've ever felt like your career doesn't align with who you truly are, Jenna's journey of embracing Reiki and astrology will offer you some amazing insights and inspiration. By listening today, you'll learn how Jenna has aligned her business with her authentic self, using astrology as a guiding tool. And stick around, because at the end of the episode, I'll share a juicy tip to help you get started on your own journey of aligning your business with your true essence. Let's dive in. All right, Jenna, I really appreciate you being my guest on the show. We've known each other for about a year and a half now, I think, as part of the Holistic Healers Mastermind group that gets together every month that kind of chats about all things business and life and how to be a spiritual entrepreneur in this modern world. So I'm just super thrilled to have you and some of the other women on the podcast later on, because we're all these people that have lived these lives, had these major transformational experiences, started our own businesses, and then are still, working on ourselves, working on our life, our business as we move along. So it's just a really fun kind of intersection of topics of this, business and personal development, living in the modern world, using ancient tools. I just love how those things all come together. So I'm just really thrilled to have you on the show today.
I am so honored to be here, Hunter. And as you're saying that, I was like, yes, had I heard somebody say that when I was a teenager, I feel like I would have really gravitated
Mm-hmm.
toward that. And oh my gosh, somebody tell me how to make that happen.
Right.
you know,
Well, we have to
um,
go through our own journeys though, right? Like our own little process and
I-
get to it there, and then hopefully accept that the timing is perfect and it's all where it's
Mhm,
supposed to be. But before we
mhm.
dive in today about your story, I would love to start off with a little mini reading of your chart, looking at your big three, your sun, your moon, and your rising. And so if you don't mind, I have your chart pulled up if I could share the screen.
Yeah,
All right,
please
perfect.
do. Thank you.
Of course. All right. So does this look like you?
It sure does.
She's like, I recognize myself very much in that. All right, perfect. So we've got Jenna's chart here, and Jenna is a Scorpio sun in the fifth house, and she is also a Cancer moon in the first house, as well as a Cancer rising. So I don't have to tell her anything about herself, because she knows probably more than I do when it comes to personal astrology, since my focus is more on the business side of things. But just for the listeners, I'll kind of dive into what that means. And of course, Jenna, if you have anything to add, please let me know. But your
Mm,
Scorpio sun in the fifth house, you're deep. You're a deep, deep, transformative, emotional, Scorpio is a water sign. And then the fifth house, the house of creativity and self-expression. So this really tells me that your business really thrives when you are full of creativity and passion. And I know we're going to talk about Reiki today, but you're also a multi-talented author, multi-passionate. You have how many careers, I think, going on at one time? 4 or 5, maybe?
Well, well, at least three.
At least 3. Exactly. So that's what I see with that Scorpio in the fifth house. So just creativity, playfulness, like that inner child energy. Like you just really love that. And I know that you're a writer and you also work at a bookstore as well. So just being
Mhm.
around that creative energy, I'm sure just really, fills you up as well, whether it's your career or your part-time job on the side. So you're really at your best in your business when you're transforming other people through really deeply personal and creative work. Does that resonate with you?
1,000,000%.
Awesome, good. And then you got Cancer moon in the first house. So with Cancer moon in the first house, nurturing, emotional connection, Cancer is like the epitome of the mother archetype. So that's just really front and center for your business. Like whenever you can take care of other people and just really love on them, Cancer being a water sign as well, like that is just really going to fulfill a lot of your emotional needs and really nurture you. through your business. So focusing on the emotional connection, sharing your personal healing journey can really help you build that deeper connection with your audience. Does that ring true for you?
Oh, yeah, very much so.
And then you got the double Cancer with Cancer rising. So with your rising sign, that's really how you come across to other people. Personally, I'm a Libra rising, and I've actually found it kind of difficult to connect with my Libra-ness. It's something that I'm working on currently. How like, do you feel really connected to your Cancer rising since you have the Cancer moon, or has that been something hard for you to connect to over the years?
I think it's been very easy for me to connect to. Also because, and this is, we don't have to talk about this, but my South node's in Cancer, so I'm meant to actually. So the challenge for me has been moving
Mhm,
into a more Capricornian
mhm,
leadership because it would be very natural and easy, but not as fulfilling to
mhm.
stay in almost the shadowy things like the codependency or things like that. So, anyways.
Absolutely. It's like you're really good at that. It's like with the South Node there, like you've done that in past lives. Your karma is in Cancer, your moon is in Cancer, your rising is Cancer. You're like, I got this. This is how I come
Yeah.
across. It's super easy. I don't even have to try. And then, like what you're saying is you're really trying to move towards that North Node, which is your purpose, which is more of that Capricorn, that self mastery, really looking out for numero uno almost, which is very opposite of the Cancer. Like, let me take care of everybody else and I'll take care of myself eventually, once everybody else is happy, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So within your business with Cancer rising, you really come across as warm, intuitive, supportive, like just right off the bat. Again, it's not hard for you. It's just something naturally that happens. So people really feel like they can trust you and come to you for guidance, which makes me think, are you one of those people that are like, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I feel like I've known you forever. I feel like I can trust you with anything. Does that happen to you a lot?
Yeah, and I take it so seriously. I take that, like, very, very seriously, and sometimes I think that that can almost halt my progress
Oh,
because
yeah.
I start to get into, like, "Okay, but I'm," blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
like a duty. Like I have a duty now. You've shared this with me. I need to help you. Doesn't matter what I was trying to do. I need to help you now with our cancer, right?
Yeah, and it's so fulfilling to help people, so if I'm able to be helpful, as long as I'm helpful, I can sleep at night, kind of.
I think that's the motto. It's like, was I helpful today? Yes. Okay, go to bed.
Yes.
All right,
Exactly.
job is done. I can now sleep peacefully. Well, that's awesome. So that's just a little bit of a mini bio of Jenna. And obviously the chart is incredibly complex. Those are just kind of her top three, the big three, the sun, the moon, and the rising, which it gives us kind of a basis to refer back to as we're talking today about your business. But I will get rid of your lovely chart. And then we will chat about your second chapter, basically. I
Mhm.
really want to know. And when I say second chapter society, this could be new job, new career, new relationship, new me, like new city, like so whatever people's second chapter is, like where they kind of started over again and they're like on that, I will say the right path, but obviously as we know, there's like a million different paths and it could be a third chapter, fourth chapter, a fifth chapter. Like who knows what happens in this life, but I would love to hear from you, like your second chapter story that brings you here today.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much for reading my chart and just seeing me. I think that that's one of the most healing parts of astrology is getting to feel seen. So, thank you for that. And for the listeners, that it's so interesting because I feel like my path forked, and so much changed when my dad passed away when I was 23. So I'm the child of an alcoholic. I grew up in a dysfunctional home. I'm very open about it. Part of, I feel like my mission on this planet is to normalize that these things exist. There's no shame in it. And to vocalize that and really bring that forward that you're seen. And it's often a very quiet struggle.
Mhm,
So going back to my Cancer and my Cancerian energy, actually, the first half of my life was anticipating the needs of everyone around me. And so I didn't really have a direction for my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know who I was. I was in school for fashion. I had an associate's degree in fashion. I was going for my bachelor's in fashion. So still creative, but it was in the marketing world. And so I was like, maybe I'll go into corporate 9 to 5, which is great for some people. I just felt like it was eating away at my soul. And I was really in just survival mode for the first half of my life. And so when my dad passed away, there was this kind of fork that happened where I was like, the person who really took up all the
Mhm.
focus of my attention in my life was gone. And I was left with facing my trauma. I was left with facing all of it. And so I had these like panic attacks, but I didn't know that's what it was
Mhm.
because we didn't talk about mental health. And, I'd been to therapy before, but I didn't know. I had no idea. So I went to the doctors. I thought something was really wrong with me. And it was like a year of just nightly panic attacks. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning. I was shaking. I was convulsing. I was sick. And they're like, I don't know. Your blood work looks fine. So just unless we can see you in it. And I'll never forget. She was like, unless I see you in an episode, I don't know what's going on with you, which is fair. But I was really suffering. And
Fair but
so,
not helpful, right?
right. And so I ended up reading a book. I was working at the bookstore at the time and I had been writing a book, but I was like, you know, I don't know. Anyway, I didn't believe in myself. And so I read a book and the character was having the same symptoms
Mm.
that I was having, and she was having panic attacks. And it didn't even occur to me because the most stress of my life had passed. Like I was finally safe. I was finally
Oh,
like in a place of comfort and a peaceful surrounding. So I didn't understand. It never occurred to me that I could be stressed. I didn't understand trauma at the time. I didn't understand PTSD. I didn't understand any of it.
it's like the brain knows you're safe, but like your body is like has not caught up to it just yet. It's like, no, no, still danger, still danger.
Not Yeah, exactly, and it was actually, I think, in the quietness and the safety that my body was starting to process
Mhm.
everything, and that was how it was trying to process the trauma. So, I started meditating because I heard that that was helpful for stress, and that's when my second chapter
Mhm.
began because I realized how important my mental health was. That was something that was such a back burner, not even really thought in my mind. I was so focused on my physical health for so long. And I was like, holy moly, my mental health is informing my physical health. So that was my second chapter beginning. And so then from the meditation, it always had kind of like a little spiritual nudge to me, but I just kind of let it go. And when I started with meditation, my intuition started to come through and I just wanted to understand it. And I'm a pretty skeptical and practical minded person. So I was very interested in the science
Mhm.
of intuition, the science of creativity, the science of all these things. And that set me on the path of just, well, let's try it. Let's try and see if I can use my intuition. Let's see if I can connect to my guides. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Might as well try. So that's really where I began. And I started the podcast to share what my story,
Mhm.
and it seemed to be really well received. So, and then I started writing. I mean, so and then it just kind of all started to fall into place. But it really started with taking the leap of faith to share my story and just be like, "Hey, I'm going through this thing, and this is what I've learned. This is what I'm still thinking about." And I learned that that can be really healing just to share your story and how empowering sharing your story can be for yourself on your personal journey. And that people really are lonely on this journey and they don't need to be. They can, we're not alone. And I think that that just became kind of my motto, my like life motto for my second chapter was you're not alone. And that's my
It's so
story.
interesting because going back to your chart, you look at that fifth house placement, which is typically Leo rules the fifth house. That's for that creativity, being center stage, that playfulness. So you talk about writing and starting a podcast, like that just fits perfectly in with your astrology to go through the healing. So it's like you had it there all along. And that's what I love about the astrology is like we have it there all along, but we might not know how
Mhm.
to access it, or we might have been told that it was wrong to be like that. Like, oh, don't be too creative, don't be too childlike. You need to be serious, have a career, get a bachelor's in marketing. And I love how you did a big like body sigh before you said the corporate 9 to 5. You were like, like, like I can just imagine you. applying for jobs and just like, this is not at all what I want to be doing, So daring to have a life that's also different than possibly every other life you've known before, or what society or our parents or our friends tell us should be our life, So it's like a lot of these
Yes.
people in our position, like as spiritual entrepreneurs, are finding that we tried to live the good life, the normal life, the life you're supposed to want. And it smacked us in the face. It didn't work for us. And we either burned out or we had physical issues. We might have lost relationships, whatever it might be. And then when you are kind of like, okay, I'm going to be really brave and I'm gonna be a little bit weird and I'm gonna do things my way. And then it's like so much easier and so wonderful. And like you mentioned though, the loneliness creeps in because you're like, no one else is doing this. Everyone else is either following the rules and not talking about it, or they're not succeeding and they're miserable as well. Like there's nobody that's breaking the rules and still succeeding in life. So that combination again of the modern with the ancient, with the mental and the physical, I think it's just so important. That balance is what we're very much missing in this modern society.
100%. And I think that like my husband's actually a fantastic example of like he's great. Like he's like, I collect my paycheck, I'm good. I feel helpful, I feel useful, it's fulfilling, and the structure works for me.
Mhm,
I think that, and then there's other people where that structure just doesn't work for who we are,
mhm.
you know? So now I'm going through the process of getting diagnosed for ADHD.
Oh,
And so that's a huge part of like, I feel like this next chapter of understanding that like
mhm,
some systems are not designed for my brain. They're just literally not designed. And it's part of reclaiming my authenticity,
mhm,
it's part of reclaiming and understanding myself.
mhm,
And so anyway, long story short, it's like I love that that works for some people, and like some of us just know in the marrow of our bones that that's like really not going to work,
mhm.
at least for the long term. And I was privileged and lucky enough to be able to take that leap and with more or less know that like I'm going to be okay. But it was so scary. It was so scary. The whole process has been very scary. Like,
Well,
but you find people, you find your community, and I
yes.
think that's so important.
And what I take from that is that like be open, be open to doing things a different way, be open to experimenting, and it's not always going to work out the first time. And instead of looking at it as like a failure, it's like, oh, it's an experiment. Okay, let me try this, and that didn't work. Let me try this, that kind of worked. Let me go back to this. And I think lives can be lived in lots of different ways. And so like following the rules doesn't necessarily work for some people. It does work for others, but for those of us that have followed the rules and gotten to a point where we're like, this is not quite working for me anymore, it's like going into that next step of either looking at your chart to figure out what your ideal career is, or what ideal business you could start, or even if you want to keep your career and start like a nonprofit or some like a hobby or passion project on the side. Like there's so many ways we can get fulfillment that don't just have to be through our careers, our businesses, our kind of like that standard idea. But you were talking earlier about your journey and all the the transitioning with your dad, and we talked about the cancer earlier. When I first met you, and we talked about that you're a Scorpio sun, Scorpios get a bad rep sometimes. It's like, oh, oh, she's a Scorpio. Oh, watch out. I would just love to hear from your perspective, since you do know astrology, and obviously you are a Scorpio as well. Like, what are the positive sides of being a Scorpio, whether it's a sun or any other sign that you've really just been like, I'm so glad I have this? I mean, every sign has its shadow side, of course, but like, what maybe top two or three characteristics of Scorpios have you just loved utilizing in your life and your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first would be single words, Jenna, single words. The first would be transformation.
Mhm.
I think that that can be really intense, and it's an invitation. We exist invitations for transformation. And so I think a lot of times Scorpios internalize that as we are a problem
Oh,
because we don't always get great feedback from just who, like we can't change like how we enter like our energy in a way like of how we enter the room, and like we are invitations for transformation. So I think that, but in a positive sense, when you do this work,
mhm,
you're able to hold the space for that transformation, that and that self-healing to occur
mhm,
naturally. So there's one. And then 2, I would say we're intense. And again, that can be good, that can be bad. But it's always a spectrum. It's always a spectrum. So the intensity is something I like to celebrate because it means that we have capacity to really
Mm,
sit with the heavier things that life can bring. And so that gives us a superpower of sorts where transformation is intense and transformation is deep. So we do have that capacity for that. So I celebrate that.
yeah.
And then I think that the third thing is intuitive.
Mm,
We're really intuitive. And intuition and creativity live in the same place of the body.
mm,
So I believe so. We're really creative too. And we can utilize that and kind of cast the vision uh, really well,
yeah.
I think.
I
There's
love that you
those are
said invitation and transformation. I think that's really cool because it's, each sign is like, I have this within me to transform. And I also have the energy to help you transform and facilitate that because it comes so easily for me. And other people
yes.
might be like, I really want to transform, but I don't know how to start. It's like, go find a Scorpio. Like, they will,
Yep.
they will help you.
Scary. It's scary. It's not scary for a Scorpio, but I think that we understand it on an intrinsic
Yeah.
level because of, the time we're born. We're born right at Samhain. We're born right, at Halloween when the veils are thin, life and death. And so we're naturally considering those things. Pluto is our ruler, life and death.
Mhm.
So we're naturally in that portal of transformation, like
Really.
just as we
Whatever
exist.
is taboo and you shouldn't talk about, that's the that's the
I
domain
want
of
to talk
Scorpio.
about it. Well, I want to talk about really, it's the small talk is where I get caught
Oh
off
yeah.
guard because I'm like,
No.
I don't know how to do this. That's not natural for me.
You're like, tell me your deepest fear. Oh my gosh,
Yes,
what?
interesting. Let's
We're
talk about
Scannable
that. Where's
forever.
that come from?
Let's be best friends now.
Yeah, silly.
No, I love that. So what I would love to hear from you, from your perspective is like someone who's listening who, might feel stuck in their career or like you mentioned you had a, major transition in your family relationships, like who you were, like your identity. So somebody that might be unsure of like what to do next in either building their ideal life or, overcoming a trauma. Like what advice would you give them on getting started on this journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for anybody going through a massive transformation, I would like to first just reflect back how much energy that takes. And so be gentle with yourself
Mhm.
as much as you can because it's the deepest work. Um, so there's that. And then the second thing that I would say is the number one thing that if I could gift this to everybody to utilize as the tool in their tool belt every day is curiosity.
Mm,
Just stay curious. The only thing I am an expert at in this lifetime is trying on different hats. I have tried on a billion hats, and just stay curious. And there's a resonance that I think we're searching for when we try these things on.
mhm,
And it can't be taught. It can only be felt. But that resonance, you'll feel it when it's right. And even if it's scary,
Mhm.
and it's not, it won't feel a little scary,
Mhm.
but or a lot scary. It took me forever to say I wanted to be a writer. Even though I've written my whole life,
mhm,
wrote books when I was in first grade,
right.
but it took me till I was 27 to be like, oh, I want to be a writer.
Mhm.
So it can be really scary and we can hide that from ourselves. But if you just stay curious and give yourself permission to try, without expectation of the outcome, every day you'll get a step closer
Mhm,
to really just discovering who you are. And that also evolves over time.
mhm.
So stay curious would be my number one. And it's never going to be done in a day.
No.
I think it's a lifelong thing. I think we like find pockets and then
Mhm,
we move on, we're always changing, we're always evolving.
Absolutely. Well, you're reading my mind because it's just like when people talk about transformation, I usually say, transformation is not for the weak of heart. Like when you
No.
decide to change, that's not your one and only change. Now that you've like kind of opened that portal, like there's going to be some other layer that's going to come, some other things you don't want to work on because now you're like, oh, I've transformed. I feel better. I've worked through this. Like, give me some more. And it's almost like a drug in the sense of it could be really hard during the transformational period, but once you come out of it, you're like, oh my gosh, like, how was I even holding on to that for so long? Like, who was I even during that time? And you come out of it like feeling so much better on the other side. But it's almost like you avoid it to a certain extent because you're like, oh no, I have to go through another transformation right now. And I'm tired.
I I feel that in my soul. I feel that in my soul. It's just like sometimes I'm like, again, like really, but and I think something that you just said, Hunter, really like sparked for me because Spark Intention has been an ever evolving body of work and ever evolving, in a way, creative project, art project for me. So you can, if you start at the beginning, you will see a billion iterations of Jenna, a billion different changes. The songs change, the intros change, what I do changes, and it's all there. It is like a time capsule of my journey with my career. And I kept it like that. I could have deleted them, I could have archived them, but I kept it like that because I wanted to share through example. This is how messy it is. It's messy. It's a mess. And
I
that's
think that'll be
okay.
great content for you. And that's actually the next question I was going to ask you is that you have the Spark Intention podcast that you did for a while. And like you mentioned, you were taking a break, but you are rebooting it starting in 2025. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. Wonderful. And you mentioned that you wanted to do probably 12 to 13 episodes a year. And it's going to be more like really, it's going to be like roundtable discussions or
What
talking to people, like giving them advice and suggestions, or what? Do you have a vision for how that's going to flow?
Yeah, I do. So that rebelliousness that we were talking about a little bit earlier, I was sitting in a conversation in a group, and they were talking about how lonely the journey was with perimenopause.
Mhm.
And I was like, why? Why is this what why are we suffering with this in silence? It was similar to how I felt that like fire in me, that rebellious fire that I feel. My Saturn is 0 degrees Aquarius.
Mm.
So there is that like kind of innovative, rebellious
Mhm.
thing toward
Revolutionary.
me.
Mhm.
And I get mad because why do we have to suffer with this in silence when we can heal? It can be healing to know that you're not alone and to hear other people's experiences and stories so that you have some baseline for how to go into the doctor's office, how the language the experiences they had. I just think it's not something we need to keep quiet. I don't see why we should ever have to keep that quiet, that natural process quiet. And so I was like, what do something about that? Sure.
Awesome. So that's going to be the intention of Spark Intention is to,
That's the intention of this era of
yeah.
Spark Intention. It's going to be just these roundtable topics of things that are not usually talked about,
Mhm.
and friendship breakups, perimenopause. God, I have a whole list. I have a whole list of ideas, but just to give you a little flavor,
Yeah.
we will be discussing these types of topics, and it's not just going to be me, because I think that the conversation really starts to like activate some things when we get more people involved, and I can't speak to perimenopause yet. So there's these things though that I feel like are going to be so fun to talk about. But again, the Scorpio, I think this is so fun. I think this is the most exciting thing, and other people are like,
It's the taboo topic. You're going to bring it to the light. You're going to talk
yeah,
about it and make it super acceptable, like dive into it. And then when you get to that point in your life, you're like, oh, I got this. And you'll probably be on to some other, transformational topic at that point.
not something else. Yeah.
You're like being all proactive. Like, I'm going to do things in advance.
I like to think about that. I do.
I love
I
it.
do.
That's awesome. All right, perfect. So thank you so much for telling us about that. I would love to include a link in the show notes when you have that information. But for everybody listening, just keep an eye out for Spark Intention. I'm sure it's going to be at all the places like Apple Podcasts and
Do.
Spotify and YouTube and all that jazz in like 2025. And check out Jenna for talking about some deep topics that are taboo that most other people can't talk about unless they're a super cool Scorpio like you are. And then I wanted to go into kind of like the next part of my show because I love problem solving. So I'm a Gemini. I have a lot of Virgo placements. I have Mercury in Gemini. So I like thinking on my feet. And so I
Really?
calling this next portion the vanilla ice segment because it's like, if you got a problem, yo, I'll solve it. Because I love solving business problems. Like problem solving is my favorite thing to do. It's like, I can't figure this out. What is this? What's going on? It's like, ooh, let's dive into it. So that's my favorite thing. You've got the transformational stuff. I've got like the tell me your problem that you can't solve and let me solve it for you. So I would love to hear if you're having any kind of problems, struggles, questions in your business, and we can kind of talk about it and hopefully solve it for you so you can move past that onto your merry way.
Oof. Yeah, sure. And I think the problem, I don't, the thing I've been noodling on
Mhm.
a lot has been just how can I really just continue to grow and nourish my community, but really just grow it, you know? And so I feel like sometimes I come to this like I don't even know. I'm like staring at all these tools. It's like I'm looking at like this unassembled IKEA furniture, but they didn't give me the workbook, you know? So I'm just kind of like, oh, no, you know, I could try and put this together, but it's falling apart. And that's kind of how I feel
Mhm.
about community aspect of it. So that is my like biggest kind of question right
Yeah.
now.
So really looking at how to better or best nourish your community
Uh,
with your natural intrinsic abilities. So that's awesome. So for community, where I would really look there in your chart would be, looking at Libra, because Libra is all about partnerships and relationships. I would also look at the seventh house, which Libra rules. So again, partnerships, relationships. And then I also wanted to look at your 11th house, which is, groups and connections, collaborations, networking, kind of like the bigger picture. So to kind of see what natural abilities do you have in order to better nourish your community. And hopefully you can kind of tap into those and then it'll feel super easy. And it will be like, why did I even have that question? It's like a what Wizard of Oz, like I had the shoes all along, so I had this all along.
That usually works that way.
Exactly. Yeah. Say, oh, that's what that is. Perfect. Now I got it. So for you, we talked about your chart a little bit earlier. So you've got your fourth house in Libra. I think I'll do a little screen share again, for people who want to learn. Okay. So you've got your fourth house right here is in Libra. And then we talked
Mhm.
about your 11th house is in Taurus. And then your seventh house, which is ruled by Libra, is in Capricorn. And you've got Saturn there, like you mentioned, kind of even though it's in Aquarius, it's still in your seventh house. So I really do take that to mean that like community and partnerships and relationships, not that they're hard for you, but they can be like your work, like the thing in this life that you're really trying to perfect, to overcome, to really feel comfortable with. So it really is a perfect question with Saturn there. So with your fourth house in Libra, Libra's, the scales. So it's all about balance, like harmonious environments. So within your business, really focusing on a community that like thrives on collaboration and connection.
Mhm.
And the fact that I know
Mhm.
you, I know that's fairly easy for you because I just see it like everybody can meet you just like a Jenna. I love her. She's amazing. I want to be best friends with her, So it's just awesome to see that magnetic side of you. So maybe it's like hosting regular hangouts, that could be like office hours or like Q&A sessions or even like co-working sessions just in quiet so people could really come together and like share and support each other. I think you have such a natural ability in that area. And then if we look at the 11th house in Taurus, again, which is kind of your networking, your communities, your groups. So Taurus being an earth sign, you really are able to offer like stability and like grounded advice to your community. So really offering practical, like consistent content that your community can count on. And I don't know if you're still doing it, but on your TikTok, you were doing astrology in 60 seconds, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would be a great example of that. It's like astrology in 60 seconds. I'm going to break it down, this really super complex thing that most people look at a chart and they're like, ah, like, what is that
Yeah.
even? Like, this is what it is. This is what it means. Here's what you can tap into. So like, that's a perfect example of your 11th house in Taurus and being able to tap into that. And then finally having Saturn in the Capricorn in your seventh house. So really what's important here is for you to have boundaries and really be careful with your commitments in your personal relationship, but also in your business relationships. Because again, you got all that Cancer. This really makes you want to take care of everybody else and put their needs ahead of your own. Whereas Capricorn is more about the self and, putting your needs ahead of everybody else's because you need to do what you need to do in order to help other people type of thing. So
Mhm.
that is what I would say, having like the grounded content like you already have with your 60 seconds, having regular hangouts with your community, which we're going to talk about an offer that you have with your full moon circles. So I think that's another
Mhm.
great example that you already have. And then setting boundaries. I think setting boundaries might be the last piece of the puzzle that you haven't tapped into just yet. You have the other things in spades. And so maybe put
I
down,
hear a sh
shh, don't tell anybody.
this
Uh,
line.
and so really establishing those boundaries, whether it's energetic, mental, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
or just what you're doing, how you feel when you're doing it, is going to be that last piece of the puzzle. And then I think you'll feel really connected. But probably what's happening again, Cancer likes to hide, likes to be like a hermit. So you're probably hiding when it gets too intense versus let me put these boundaries up and stick with them so that I'm in a safe, happy environment. Does that resonate with you?
Not a thing I'd add.
Well, I think what's really cool is you're at least two-thirds of the way there if we look at just those three placements. So adding the boundaries on top of it, which as we both know is a little bit easier said than done,
Ugh.
but that's probably your great work right now is just establish those boundaries, take care of yourself first. And by doing that, you're actually going to serve your community better by taking care of yourself
Yeah.
first. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And serve my creativity better.
Mhm.
Oh my I was house sitting for a friend over summer
Mhm.
and was there for like 10
Oh,
days. And I gotta tell you, if it was like the first time in 2 years, I felt like myself
oh,
because I was isolated. I was alone, but I was working, I was writing. I was just like and then I had so much time,
mm,
so much
that's
free
good.
time for like activities. And I was like, I can puzzle, I can and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
The thing is that I freaking love to be with people and
Mm,
I love to serve people. So the boundaries, it's tricky.
yeah.
It's tricky. Yeah,
Like, how
you're
can
absolutely
you balance that? Again, talking about Libra, how can you balance that desire to be alone, have the alone time, the reset time, the rest time, but also with the desire to be around people? So it's like, how can I, and again, being a multi passionate person like you are, I think you're very talented at living kind of multiple lives at the same time. It's like I can want two totally opposite things at the same time. And I'll just make time for
Mhm.
both of them. And again, that goes back to balance. It goes back to masculine and feminine energy, like we talked about. It goes back to corporate versus entrepreneur. There's all those dichotomies. And really, what we realize as we go through this work is like it's a spectrum, like you said earlier. So it's not like one or the other. I can only have this one. I can't have this one. It's like I can have both, maybe not at the same time, but it's almost like a visitation schedule, like every other Tuesday. I'll make sure and do
Yes.
this, or once a week, or once a month, or whatever. Cadence really fits well for what you're trying to accomplish. But with that being
Yeah.
said, I would love to hear about your full moon ritual circles.
Yeah, yeah, full moon rituals. So I started them actually in person and then COVID happened and so I went online and we have people from around the world at this point who pop in and at different times. But it's just become this really magical space. They meet each other in the full moon circle, but then they're in, the group accountability, which I also have once a month for people. And so it's so cool to see them be kind of build these connections and these friendships and they're just and it's like honestly it's such a gift. It's such a gift. I don't even have words for it. So I actually created a 22-page like self booklet that you can go through on your own. So it's recorded, but you can go through it on your own too. It tells you about this moon, it gives you the astrology influences. I do a single card reading at the end of the circle for everybody, and I do a tarot card reading for the collective, and I put that in the booklet as well. We have a group cosmic Reiki experience, so I take you into kind of a guided meditation, really, and then I do the group Reiki from there. And then we do some moon magic. So we fit a lot into an hour.
Great.
And I talk about the astrology, and the intention was really just to have fun, but also give an opportunity for kind of this self-paced journey. So yeah, it's one of the things I look most forward to every month, and I just love the community that lives there. So shout out to you all if you're watching this. But
Wonderful.
you make my month.
So we just had a full moon recently with the lunar eclipse, right? And so everybody's still recovering from that. So it'll probably be about 28 days from now when the next full moon will be. So we'll put a link in the show notes about that information so people can join you for that and check out all the fun Scorpio magic that will be happening at that time. And it's so funny you just mentioned a card pull, because I would love to do a card pull at the end of this conversation, since we're kind of coming to a close, and just something that, I have a ton of decks. I have a little bit of a problem.
Oh,
I have a little bit of a problem.
if I could bring you to my wall, it's an actual wall. My husband had to build anyway. I understand.
It's definitely a problem. So I'm like, what I'll do is put these decks to good use. I'll kind of intuitively choose one based on the person and what I feel like their energy is coming through. So for you, I have chosen the Goddess Within Oracle.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I've never
seen
have?
Yay!
I don't have that one. The shop.
So I really got into all of the, feminine energy and the Goddess Within. This part of my story is, I ran a very masculine life, like super corporate CEO. I thought feminine energy was weak and like unnecessary. And why would you do that? And so part of my journey has been kind of getting in touch with my feminine side and really understanding that. And again, my Libra, I have a Libra rising, which is ruled by Venus, which is one of the few goddesses that is included in astrology. And so it's like, oh, great. And this is really calling me to connect with my feminine energy. So I wanted to share that with you today as well. I know you're a lot closer to yours than I am to mine, but this just really called to me. So what you got? All right. So we've got the Queen of Sheba, which looks very Scorpio to me. Looks like the Temple of Doom from Indiana Jones.
I love it.
So let me just look up the interpretation here, just for you to go about your day with. All right, the Queen of Sheba. So you are being reminded that you do not need to do anything to be deemed worthy of receiving. You are safe to tap into the abundant flow of the universe now, just as you are. And so that is for Jenna, but that's also for anybody listening. That's a great message to take home. And depending on what you like to do, can journal on that, can meditate on it, can just, carry it with you, write it on a Post-it note. Sometimes I use them kind of as affirmations, just to remember that it sounds like you are wonderful just the way you are, and you can receive and be all the things you need to be. You don't have to prove anything or do anything or win any prize in order to get there. But that is for you, Jenna, for today.
Thank you so much, Hunter. This has been so fun and nourishing. And I hope that others listening, I just know others listening are going to get so much out of your, what you have to offer, and just how you're sharing the second chapter is so, speaking of like revolutionary, it's so needed. It's so needed. And I'm so grateful that that you've created this for all of us.
Well, thank you so much. At some point, I'm sure I'll dive into why I created this. It's also part of my astrology, but everything happens for a reason, right? This is nothing's random, but really appreciate you being the guest. And I will look forward to this episode coming out, and I'll let you know when it is live.
Thank you, Hunter. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to shoot me a message on TikTok or connect with me on YouTube. Links can be found below in the show notes. Until next time, keep building your business with mastery and a sprinkling of magic.